And Jeffrey Edward Epstein?
Have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Yes.
How would you define the Epstein files in your opinion, and what do you think these are?
Negative and disgusting things that happened, and unfortunately they involved a lot of people in elite positions. Epstein said that Imran Khan was a big threat, a bigger threat than Putin. They wanted the cloth of the Kaaba. Now, many Muslims were angry about that. Maybe it went to the devil. Maybe it went to the Dajjal. Maybe it went to Baal, as they were saying.
Touching the base on Donald Trump, for example, on the files he came across, like, let's look at Donald Trump, the presidential journey, I guess, assume in this case. So he got elected as a president. Before he got elected as a president, he said that he was going to make these records public.
Yeah.
And after he became president, he said that then there was nothing in these files that needed to be shared, and the chapter was kind of closed off.
Because he could have been confident that he wasn't involved in terms of the documentation that they had, but of course everyone's compromised in that level. The worst thing about Elon Musk is he was looking to go on the island after Epstein was convicted.
And the references to Baal, what's your thought on that?
On the investigations, that it just means like bank transfer basically. There's just a spelling error in terms of the files.
The level of system that these guys must have put in place is crazy. Thank you once again for being on this show. There was a lot that we touched on our last conversation together, but there is still a lot that we haven't touched on, and I want to discuss a bit more of that into this conversation. So picking up on where we left last time, following that conversation up, so we touched bases on different controversial topics, such as the Epstein files, for example. Yes. Let's talk about Epstein files for a second. Let's start with the overall, what the Epstein files are. I guess for some people that might not have heard it might be rare, but there might be some people that never heard of the Epstein files. How would you define the Epstein files in your opinion, and what do you think these are?
I think it's satanic. I think it's the work of the devil. I think there's a lot of negative and disgusting things that happened, and unfortunately they involved a lot of people in elite positions. So a lot of the leaders, a lot of people that are in control of our businesses and governments, etc., all involved in that case. But what I learned from it, and I was saying to people last week, was that there was a positive in there if you're Muslim. There was 3 things that flagged up. Number 1, Imran Khan. Epstein said that Imran Khan was a big threat, a bigger threat than Putin. And I don't think it was because of army. I think it was more because of who he was in terms of his leadership, that he could galvanize people. Number 2, they mentioned Turkey. They said that a lot of the youngsters in Turkey are more practicing Muslim. We need to stop this. And number 3 was the Kaaba. They wanted the cloth of the Kaaba. Now, many Muslims were angry about that. But for me, yes, we don't want to go into the hands of someone who was convicted of paedophilia. But for me, I looked at it from a perspective of, why do they want something that's so precious to Muslims? What's special about it if they feel that our religion isn't important? Why do you want this piece of cloth? And yes, people say, well, he wanted it as a carpet. Okay. But I would say, potentially, maybe that carpet went to the hands of someone else. Maybe it went to the devil. Maybe it went to the Dajjal. Maybe it went to Baal, as they were saying.
Yeah, there is references of Baal as well.
There is reference of the bank account, yes.
Yeah. So, me personally, when I started to look into a bit more about this, I have a very different opinion about it. I'm not even sure if these files are actually even real. And what makes me say that is the fact that the timing doesn't add up to begin with. Secondly, the errors made by CIA, for example, they also don't make any sense whatsoever. Like, we're talking about CIA, we're not talking
Yes.
about your average organization. So, they do have a very, very competitive recruitment process. They do have a lot of very highly tech, softwares and items and things like that, power in place. How can they make stupid mistakes such as hiding one piece of information in the document, in the exact same document, not hiding that piece but hiding something else? What's your opinion on that? What do you think?
My opinion is that to release 3 million files, they're basically saying to the average Joe, you look through it all. But the average Joe wouldn't look through it all. And if they're as intelligent and as sophisticated in their processes, shouldn't the CIA and FBI and so on already dive into all this and start arresting people? So I think what they've done is they put a flood of information out there that no one's going to look into just to box it off. Because then all of a sudden, John Smith, who works at Tesco, he's going to talk about this subject, but he's not going to dive into it, is he? Because there's 3 million files. Who's going to have the time to go through it all? So I think there's a lot of strategy involved there. And the names that were highlighted out were potentially Netanyahu, etc. Because all of a sudden, this guy who's been about since 1999, where life has just gone very difficult for a lot of people, he's not mentioned in it. But yet, if Epstein was working for Israel, which everyone knows he was, then I'm sure there'll be a lot of connections with Netanyahu and his government.
Yeah, touching the base on Donald Trump, for example, on the files he came across. Like, let's look at Donald Trump, a presidential journey, I guess, assume in this case. So he got elected as a president. Before he got elected as a president, he said that he was going to make these records public.
Yeah.
And after he became president, he said that then there was nothing in these files that needed to be shared, and the chapter was kind of closed off.
Yeah.
How come out of a sudden just now the whole Epstein files are getting released? And
because he could have been confident that he wasn't involved in terms of the documentation that they had. But of course, everyone's compromised in that level. So unfortunately, in this world, people are bought.
don't you think it feels very coincidental that Epstein files got released on the 30th of January, and there's Netflix shows about it, there's multiple, the biggest podcasters in the world genuinely talking about it, going through these files, and there's one of the biggest channels on social medias, on TVs, and so on and on. They all talk about and highlighting this issue. Do you believe this could be a reason, or this could be something that they're trying to use to distract people from what's actually happening around the world?
Yeah, of course. Of course. I think ultimately everyone who they're saying is bad is probably good. So if you think about it deeply, the people that they're saying are evil and bad and we need to be threatened of, they're not in the Epstein files. The people that we're meant to be looking up to, they're on the Epstein files. So what does that tell us? That tells us that we're moving towards a generation now of good versus evil. So you have to pick your side and you need to make sure you're on the right side, because it's heading towards that where I feel like we are heading towards end times, and there's a certain group that want to accelerate that. That's why they're pushing towards all this calamity around the world, because they have their own agenda where they have an idea that they want to bring their Messiah, and their Messiah is going to reward everyone that's helped.
Elon Musk's name appeared on these files as well, and I think he's the first trillionaire, or well, one of the very few trillionaires in the whole game. What I can't wrap my head around it is how this person, let's just say someone, let's look at it logically. So someone was doing something illegal, and obviously he wasn't stupid, so he knew he was doing something illegal, such as child prostitution, for example. How would this person keep 3 million files? Or how can you find millions of documents of, especially look at the emails, for example. Like, we're not talking about your average businessman and average person. We're talking about like presidents of the countries. We're talking about trillionaires, billionaires, and people that are very, very highly influential. And those emails, they don't add up. Like, would someone that assumably, let's just say, was doing something wrong or was supposedly involved into a crime, why would they have an open and transparent conversations like these with this individual, for example?
Well, the worst thing about Elon Musk is he was looking to go on the island after Epstein was convicted.
2013 it was, I believe.
So,
Yeah.
So he's already been arrested for child prostitution, sex trafficking, but Elon Musk was emailing trying to get on the island.
Yeah, there were references to parties.
Yeah, yeah.
And but see, that's the question. Like, why or how is it possible for this person? Obviously, even in 2013, we again talking about big influential people. If it was an average person or an average organization or average people involved,
Yeah.
I would understand that they would not have had access to these sophisticated technologies. For
Yes.
example, I was listening to this podcast earlier this morning, and there's this ex-CIA individual that talks about the kind of access CIA has, and is crazy. Like, there's no privacy, and just not CIA. It's not just CIA. You know, all of these intelligence agencies obviously would have that kind of power. How is it possible that someone running an operation this big doesn't think of this data getting leaked or this data getting exposed into the world?
Have any of them been arrested?
Of course, no, I
Well,
don't
there you
think it
go.
would.
There's your answer. Because they know that no one's going to do anything because of their wealth and power. So if the CIA leaked out everything for every single leader and business owner that went on that island, what would happen? You'd have to have a revolt. So if everyone revolted, but as we alluded to last time, then life would be better. But unfortunately, there's too many sheep. And that's why we allow it to continue. Because everything they've taught us over the past 100 years about these types of business owners, etc., look up to these guys are great, etc. All of a sudden, if you took that away, society would look a lot more better. But then they would have taught us a systematic lie that these are what you're trying to achieve. Aiming for this value of an Elon Musk, aiming for power in terms of a Trump. But all these people were basically with little kids on an island. And that's why I was going back to what I said last time about being compromised. You can take the money, you can excel your business, you can have all the millions in the bank, but you'd have to part with a piece of your soul. And that's where you have to make a decision. All business owners do when they're trying to grow to scale. You have to make a decision. Do I want to incorporate the devil into my life? Because sooner or later, you will be invited to that island. And like I say to people, there'll be people that went on the island innocently, thinking I'm just going to a party. But then all of a sudden, they see what's going on, and what can they do? They're trapped.
Yeah. It comes down to the victims' interviews and so on I was looking at as well. So imagining a young woman in that a kid, not even a woman, a kid in that situation, trapped in an island, there's not really much that was going to happen. There's nothing that they could
No, but this
done.
is sick individuals that are having sex with children.
100%.
People don't realize that. They're just saying like they went on an island, there was pedophilia, but when you say it like that, you're not going graphically into it. But if you graphically understand what they were doing to children, that's when capital punishment should be brought in. Like people against Sharia law, but in Sharia law, capital punishment would come in and these people be hung.
That's... Where do you think these files are going to end up? What do you think? This is going to be just another
I think
conversation that people would have for a couple of months or years and forget about it? Or
it's what's the term again? Yesterday's fish and chip paper, isn't it? That's what will happen. The newspaper becomes a fish and chip paper. So, yeah, what will happen now is they can say they've released them, and it's up to, like I said, everyone to dissect it all if they want to. But they know people aren't going to. They'll just get bored. So then they'll move on to the next thing to make you forget. Through the propaganda, they'll move on to sport, they'll move on to this. Because ultimately, we know what's going on, where these leaders who, again, aren't God-fearing, they're working towards being like gods. They want to control, they want to have the power, they want to have the resources, so they can control everyone. That's why it's a small minority that are doing it.
a bunch of very influential individuals. Well, Just imagine for a second if these individuals would not exist in the society, or these individuals are completely replacing the society. Where would that take us? You could potentially just change the society how you want to change it.
Yeah, but they're doing it for their own self-gain. But if you had good people leading, what would happen? It'd be a peaceful world. People would trade nicely. There wouldn't be any evil. But you need to create evil. You need people to be desensitized. You need the family foundations to break. You need people to be more selfish in order for change to come for them, because they want that positive change for them, where they feel like the positivity is that they're working towards their own self-gain and self-goals, isn't it? Rather than caring about humanity. Because they look down on us. They think we're nothing.
Yeah, and the references to Baal, what's your thought on that? Because is it just the bank account reference that was on there?
Yeah, there's been a few things I've seen, but a lot of people are saying on the investigations that it just means like bank transfer basically. There's just a spelling error in terms of the files when people like went through it all. So
But is it a
It is
big
what-
coincidence that Baal is also the creature?
yeah, of course, but it's just I don't think we need confirmation from a four-letter word to know that these people are evil. Because to put humanity through all this, to end up having relations with young children who, let's really deep it, a lot of these children would have been killed. They would have been used and abused and thrown into the sea potentially. And even if they tried to escape, they'd probably be killed. But we don't accept that. We just talk about the individuals and the name Baal, but we don't physically and mentally and spiritually say, okay, there's kids being traumatized here and being abused by old men. And no one's doing anything about it. If you don't pay your VAT or your council tax or your parking fine, what will they do? They'll come. These guys now are at home relaxing, not worried at all that someone's going to come knock at the door. So what does that tell you? Even the person, the UAE billionaire who is in the images with Epstein, who was looking at the Kaaba, the cloth, he just resigned from his job. He's not gone to jail. He just said, I'll just resign. And everyone's like, great, good news. He's resigned from his job. But he's not gone to jail. He's just resigned. What does that tell you?
The level of system that these guys must have put in place is crazy. Like,
No, it shows you that
just to imagine.
they think they're more powerful than us. And we allow them to be more powerful than us.
In a way, they are, based on the system that we have in place. Is
Because of us, all of us. That's why I said the punishment we deserve is the punishment we're going to get. Because we allowed this to happen. There's so many human beings and there's good human beings. But there's a small minority that are bad. And we allowed the bad to control us.
That's very deep and something to definitely sit down and think a lot about, of what's happening and what's around us and what to believe and what not to believe anymore from this. I mean, how many people inspire to be these millionaires, billionaires out there, and the end goal of what actually happened in these files, as you just bluntly put it, is not acceptable in any shape or form, or does, from a human perspective, from any religious perspective, from anything. Yet, as you said, and I personally believe the same thing as well, I don't think anything would happen further to these investigations. It will pretty much be yesterday's paper, as you said, which is very, very sad when you think about it.
It's because humans are desensitized, isn't it? We don't appreciate this now. Like 20, 30 years ago, if someone died or was murdered, it's a big thing. Now it's like you see it every single day that your brain is damaged. You're seeing kids die every day. You're seeing murders happen every day. You're seeing theft. You're seeing money laundering. You're seeing bad leadership. But it's damaged your brain so much that you just sort of accept it.
That's true. There's no one can deny that, to be honest, and we all unfortunately know it. and individually, I guess, don't, you know, not what, you know, the question that arises, or the question that many people would ask themselves is, what can I do? And simply just be a better person and try to improve what's around you, and
Yes,
out of a
yes.
sudden everything in the bigger picture would also improve. And asking these questions, I think, is very important, and having the freedom of speech and speaking honestly about your opinions and speaking honestly about who you are and what you think on these matters is also very important, because I know there's many people that wouldn't even dare talking about it, which is highly appreciated of you, that, you know, you're very open about anything, and you
Yeah,
give
yeah.
your opinion on anything that deserves an opinion, I guess, which is the correct way to go about as well. Perfect, Imran. I think this leaves us with a lot of questions, and let's see what happens in the future and with these Epstein files. And let's hope that this time is not going to be the yesterday's paper, and it's not going to be the same thing that it was every time it happened. For 1 second, just talking about Epstein himself, he died / he was killed 2019. What's your thought on that?
I think Allah knows, but it's for someone that had so much influence. Would they kill him? And all of a sudden, the cameras were off during the time of
Yeah,
when
there was
he
a
was
glitch.
killed, similar to Princess Diana when she went through the tunnel. All of a sudden, the cameras were off at that time. So make of that what you will.
That too with the top of the technologies, but yeah, as you said, wow, that's a lot of deep stuff to think about. Perfect, Imran. I think this Epstein situation, let's see where this takes us, and
Yes.
is again, I think everybody listening or everybody around is shocked with what's actually happened when you genuinely break it down and what was happening, and the whole world knows about it.
Yeah.
See how this plays out. Perfect. Thanks once again, Imran, for coming on this show, and it was a pleasure. Thank you.